Last year, I made the decision to sell my home in a homeowners association, HOA, after experiencing a series of troubling events. 5 years ago, I purchased a 1,500 square foot townhome condo in a vibrant town's downtown area. The property's value had increased by 35 since I bought it, and I enjoyed the convenience of living within walking distance of all the things I loved as a single bachelor. Most of my neighbors were wonderful, except for one person. Let's call her Gimpy J. Gimpy J, a 65-year-old widow, was a member of the HOA board, but she was approaching the end of her 8-year term. She didn't have much to occupy her time after her husband's unexpected passing due to a heart attack. I was happy to hear that she had met someone online and was moving on. Through conversations with my passive neighbors, I learned bits and pieces about the issues within the HOA caused by Gimpy J and another woman who had to move due to age restrictions. These two individuals seemed to bully residents, making arbitrary changes to the landscaping and neglecting maintenance of the pool deck because they disliked children. They would report any noise from a particular house, even the slightest disturbance caused by their kids. Gimpy J also targeted a seriously ill woman because her feeding of feral cats attracted raccoons and possums, which prompted animal control intervention. Naturally, the residents did not appreciate Gimpy J's behavior. In the meantime, I got married and my wife had been living with me for 2 years. We were very happy together. Over time, Gimpy J started spending less and less time at our complex and more time with her new boyfriend who lived about an hour away in the countryside. Initially, she would only visit for the weekends or occasional week-long stays, but eventually, she practically moved in with him, spending only minimal time at our complex, roughly 15 minutes to 2 hours per month. Regarding parking, our complex had only one rule. Each resident was entitled to 2 parking spots close to their building, but not necessarily directly in front of their unit. There was no limit to the number of parking spots a resident could occupy, as long as they were near their building. The HOA had new members on the board, all under 40 years of age, and they were making positive changes to enhance the appearance of the complex. We frequently had friends over, and they would park their cars in front of our unit. Gimpy J returned after a 7-month absence and started complaining that we were parking in her spots. However, there were no assigned parking spots, so we offered to move our friends' vehicles to another empty spot. Unfortunately, Gimpy J started occupying 2 spots with her own vehicle, despite our willingness to accommodate her. This behavior persisted as she continued to take up 2 parking spots whenever she visited. According to the master deed, no vehicle was allowed to occupy more than 1 spot without written permission from the board of directors or property management. Furthermore, this permission could not exceed 2 days except for residents moving in or out. Then, during the spring of last year, my wife experienced a medical issue that resulted in a 4-day hospitalization and 8 weeks on disability. As there was no other family member available to help us, my mom drove down to assist. This required us to occupy 3 parking spots. To ensure compliance, I promptly informed the property management company and the board of directors, providing them with my mom's vehicle details and the expected duration of her stay, 6-8 weeks. Coincidentally, Gimpy J returned home after a 6-week absence. Although there was a car parked in front of her house, she still had room to park her own vehicle. Despite this, she stormed over, loudly banging on our door and attempting to enter my home uninvited. The commotion frightened my dog, causing her to urinate from the shock, and she even growled at Gimpy J before chasing her away. I firmly reminded her that there were no assigned parking spots and that the rule was 1 car per spot. Nevertheless, we decided to move our car one last time out of respect, only to find that Gimpy J had once again occupied 2 spots, as she usually did. 2 weeks later, when the same situation arose, we refused to move our vehicle. We began documenting Gimpy J's erratic behavior, taking pictures for our records and informing the HOA about the situation. Gimpy J persisted in coming to our door, banging on it, and screaming at us for parking in her spot. On one occasion, she even dented our doorframe with her keys. There were several instances when we weren't home and she took the opportunity to park in 2 spots. Sensing the need for further evidence, I diligently continued taking pictures to support my records in case her erratic behavior escalated. Finally, the breaking point arrived. Last year, while I was at the gym, both my wife and mother called me frantically, informing me that someone was threatening to tow my wife's car. Rushing home as fast as I could, I discovered Gimpy J's boyfriend's son and his girlfriend, individuals whom we had never met before, screaming insults at my pregnant wife and mother. Knowing they couldn't do much except attempt to intimidate us, I called the police. I refused to tolerate feeling unsafe or being harassed in my own neighborhood by people who didn't even live there or rarely visited. Gimpy J, upon realizing that I had called the police, parked her car behind all three of ours, effectively blocking us in. I had had enough. Quickly, I snapped some pictures as evidence and made the call. I informed the police of the ongoing situation, and they promptly arrived at the scene. I prevented Gimpy J from entering my property, blocking her way, and invited the police officers inside. We apologized to the officers for bothering them over such a petty matter, but explained that our neighbor's behavior had become increasingly erratic and concerning. We showed them our communications with the HOA, shared them our communications with the HACN, and described the incidents. The officer had grown tired of dealing with these individuals and took action. He issued a no trespass order for my porch, preventing Gimpy J from approaching my property. Any violation of this order would result in her arrest. We watched as the officer returned outside and calmly explained the situation to Gimpy J. She, along with her boyfriend's son and his girlfriend, responded by screaming and shouting. The officer called for backup, and another police car arrived promptly. At this point, Gimpy J boldly declared that the property belonged to her as well, citing her fee payments and the communal nature of the outside areas. She marched up to my stoop, and the officer promptly arrested her. She was charged with disorderly conduct and harassment. The police then instructed Gimpy J's boyfriend's son to leave the premises. As he drove away in his truck with his girlfriend, he was promptly pulled over by the second police officer for driving under the influence DUI. It turned out that the man who had been screaming at my wife and mother had been drinking throughout the entire ordeal. While the police couldn't take immediate action within the complex, they were able to enforce the law once he hit the main road. Both individuals were taken to jail, and we no longer had to deal with their parking-related grievances. In the end, this experience only reinforced my disdain for HOA. It had started off as a promising day until I ventured into the local Safestay for some shopping. Given the chaotic state of the world, I was determined to stay focused and purposeful, avoiding any unnecessary delays except when unavoidable, such as when I need to read a label. While swiftly making my way through the aisles, I encountered an elderly lady who politely requested my assistance in retrieving an item from a top shelf. Kindly obliging her, I paused momentarily, unaware of the chain of events about to unfold. As I turned to continue my shopping, I suddenly heard an agitated voice exclaim, "Ahem! Excuse me!" It was the unmistakable call of a wild Karen. Without even looking, I instinctively replied, "I don't work here. Never did." However, when I finally faced her, standing before me was a living embodiment of the infamous Karen meme, every inch a Karen. "You helped that old hag," she screeched, her voice piercing the air. "So don't try to tell me you don't work here." "I helped her because she politely asked for my assistance," I retorted sharply, refusing to be intimidated by her rude behavior. "You can take care of your own shopping and leave me be. And for the record, I don't work here." With that, I turned my back on her, resolute in resuming my shopping, purposefully ignoring her continuous screeching and yelling. Yet, astonishingly, she chose to follow me relentlessly, her shrill voice demanding the presence of a manager. A concerned employee approached, seeking to understand the commotion, only to be met with Karen's furious demand, bellowing rather than asking for a manager to be summoned immediately. The employee, not wishing to deal with such an irate customer, hurried off to locate a manager, and it would be unfair to hold them responsible for the situation. It didn't take long for a manager to arrive, and as soon as the Karen spotted them, she launched into a tirade about my alleged rudeness and refusal to assist her, weaving a web of complaints and grievances. When the manager clarified that I was simply another customer, the Karen's anger escalated to untamed proportions. She grew louder, vehemently insisting that I did work at the store, citing the incident where she saw me helping someone else. It was then that she made a critical mistake. Seizing the opportunity, I calmly stepped a few feet away to retrieve an item I had intended to purchase. The Karen, blinded by her rage, lunged at me in a desperate attempt to exact punishment for my perceived transgression. Swiftly evading her grasp, I gracefully sidestepped, allowing her momentum to carry her past me. In a tragic turn of events, she stumbled and crashed to the ground, her face meeting the floor with a resounding thud. For a moment, she remained motionless, dazed, and defeated. Let me clarify, I had not laid a finger on her. She had quite literally brought about her own misfortune. But as you might expect, this was not the end of the tale. Before long, the police and an ambulance arrived, summoned by concerned onlookers. The police officers attended to her, attempting to assess her condition without exacerbating any potential injuries. Slowly, she began to stir, attempting to rise. Naturally, she endeavored to frame me as the aggressor, claiming that I had shoved her and assaulted her. However, the manager had already provided an accurate account of the incident, and the security footage would vindicate me once it was reviewed. In her disheveled state, she was a sight to behold. Bloodstains adorned her front, most likely a consequence of a broken nose or teeth. Because I remained calm throughout the ordeal, displaying genuine concern for her well-being, the police refrained from handcuffing me. Instead, they took note of my name, address, and phone number, satisfied with my cooperation. The paramedics soon arrived, tending to her injuries before transporting her away on a gurney. As she was carted off, her final words echoed through the store, loud and rude, declaring her intention to sue everyone in sight. With a wry smile, I pointed toward the ceiling and remarked, "Security cameras. Good luck with your lawsuit." The police duly reviewed the security footage, verifying the sequence of events. After taking my statement and contact information, they allowed me to continue with my day, perplexed by the recurring theme of mistaken identity that seemed to follow me wherever I went. Fortunately, most people are polite and even apologetic once I clarify that I don't work at the establishments they mistake me for. Nevertheless, there are those who transform a simple shopping trip into a comical and exasperating adventure. Last year, amidst my struggles with poor vision and enduring constant bullying from a person named Chris, a significant incident unfolded. Chris, always taunting me for wearing glasses and having impaired vision, made my life unbearable. With one eye completely blind and the other eye severely impaired, I relied heavily on my iPad to assist me in reading texts or discerning objects at a distance. Even when the text was printed in a larger font, I still required the aid of my trusty device. As the time for exams approached, I found myself sharing classes with Chris. While I managed to maintain good grades, Chris was floundering and failing in almost all subjects. Desperate to avoid academic disaster, he resorted to begging everyone for help in cheating. Ordinarily, I would have considered lending a helping hand, but considering the torment he had put me through, I had no intentions of assisting him. To my surprise, Chris approached me, requesting my assistance in cheating. Realizing that this was an opportunity for sweet revenge, I deviously agreed. Little did he know that I would be providing him with all the wrong answers. 2 weeks later, our exam results were released, and Chris discovered to his dismay that he had failed every single exam. Except for a 55 in English, he had nothing to show for his efforts. On the other hand, I had achieved exceptional grades. Consumed by rage, Chris attempted to instigate a physical altercation with me, but the intervention of vigilant teachers prevented the situation from escalating. He couldn't reveal to anyone that I was the reason for his failure. After all, what could he say? He deliberately misled me during the exams. If he dared to divulge the truth, he would be risking punishment for his own cheating. Together with his friend, Chris resorted to hurling insults at me, labeling me a jerk and insisting that I should have let him cheat. In the end, he was left to spend his summer in the confines of summer school. Satisfaction washed over me as I realized justice had been served.